My name is Hani. I'm an artist and an activist based in Kenya. I use my arts, writing and photography to explore African queerness, sexuality, gender identity and expression, bodies and mental health. I'm currently co-curating a mental health space for art therapy where we use different forms of art such as painting, yoga, writing, photography, dancing to help people navigate mental wellness issues. The nature of work that we do as human rights defenders working on LGBT issues and journalists who cover LGBT issues is that there's a lot of trauma related to the work we do. Since most of our African countries are very homophobic and transphobic, we tend to respond to issues of violence and trauma and discrimination, and this kind of work can take a toll on your mental health. Also, generally just working in spaces that criminalize your identity and make it so hard to work can give someone stress, and there is also minority stress from just fighting the system and trying to fit in and trying to access your rights. It can take a toll on human rights defenders and also on journalists who are constantly covering stories about, hate attacks, from violence to verbal abuse to all of that happened to SSOGIE people in Kenya and in Africa. So that kind of work can lead to traumatic experiences, it can lead to stress, it can cause anxiety and panic attacks, it can also lead to depression and general burnout doing the kind of work that we do. For me, mental health is a very personal issue. For one, I am living with a mental illness. I was diagnosed with a bipolar disorder about 2 years ago. And before that, I used to do a lot of digital and physical activism on LGBTI issues. I would run a lot of digital campaigns on Facebook and Instagram on SSOGIE issues. And it took a great toll on my mental health, and I got depressed and all of that. And I realized that I did not put in place mechanisms to take care of myself. I was absorbing everything, like people reaching out. They're homeless, or they're struggling with self-acceptance, or they're being ostracized by the families. And so you don't realize how that kind of work sort of hits you so hard, especially when you're alone and you don't have a strong support system. And I think that is something that happens to a lot of human rights defenders working on SSOGIE issues. We're seen as the strong people, as activists, and usually you have to look very strong. But what happens is that at the end of the day, when you're just alone, it wears you down and it can really take a toll on you. And for me, I had to even take a break from doing activism just to reconnect with myself and get off social media and all of that. And so when I came back into the activism space, I decided that I'm going to center mental health as a very crucial bit to my work, and especially mental health of activists who work with SSOGIE people in Africa. And that's why mental health is very personal to me. As activists and as writers who do a lot of work on now LGBT people, we tend to suffer burnout. The other thing that we need to focus on as journalists and as human rights defenders is seeking therapy. There's a lot of stigma around going to therapy, and especially whether it's art therapy, whether it's talk therapy, whether it's medication, there's a lot of stigma around it, and most of us don't want to admit that we're not well and that we actually need therapy, which is important. And also drug and substance use. Another way to realize that someone is, not mentally well, and things that people need to note in their day-to-day life is, changing your sleep patterns. Sometimes you realize you can't sleep at night, and insomnia, and we've over glorified not sleeping. because in a capitalist world it's just seen as, you're supposed to be productive and productive and productive, and so you have your sleep patterns change and you're not able to sleep well, and that also takes a toll on your mental health. And then there's also dissociation. Some people tend to just dissociate from others, and so when you notice that yourself or your friends or your family are sort of dissociating from you, then there could be questions around their mental health that you might want to check out. And then also just losing interest in your work and things that you enjoy doing. For example, like I enjoy photography, and I know when I stop enjoying it and it starts feeling like a chore that I have to do, then usually something is wrong and I have to pay attention to it. Self-care is about taking care of yourself intentionally. It seems simple as that, but usually it's also just simple things, like drinking water, taking fruits, eating all your meals, getting a good night's sleep, resting. Resting is very important. Resting is very productive. And again, as I said, that we're so conditioned to, you have to constantly work and meet deadlines and do this, and you have reports to do. As a journalist, you have deadlines to beat and all of that. And sometimes resting feels like you're wasting time or you're lazy. But in real sense, it's not. Resting is very productive. And that's one aspect of self-care that I would love for all of us to engage in. When you feel overwhelmed, when you feel stressed, take a break. The world is not going to stop simply because you have to work every day. Another thing is to sleep, and I think I've emphasized on that already. Make sure you sleep. There is no joy in sleeping for 2 hours or pulling an all-nighter because you're writing a report. If you don't sleep, you're going to crash. The other thing you can do is journaling. For me, that works very well because I'm a writer, so writing sort of just is that outlet that I constantly use, and it's very fulfilling for me to journal. You can also engage in a hobby, and hobbies don't have to be perfect. It can be painting, but you're not perfect at it, but just do it. And also just try to avoid commercializing your hobby. For example, you're good at crocheting, and people love the sweaters you make or the scarves you make. It doesn't mean that you have to turn that into a business, because when you turn it into a business, it takes away the joy of it being a hobby, and you constantly strive towards perfecting it and meeting, again, other deadlines for sales and all of that. So just enjoy a hobby. It doesn't have to be perfect, and don't commercialize it. You can also dance. Dancing and music is a very African thing to do for wellness. And whichever music you like, listen to it, dance to it, and you're going to just sort of release stress. Another way that you can take care of yourself is seeking therapy. There's a lot of stigma related to therapy, but you can get help, and there's help out there, and there's nothing wrong with seeking help. And you do not have to wait until you have crashed for you to go to therapy. Therapy can be something that you do every week or every twice a month, just checking in with someone and just releasing your thoughts, sharing your emotions and all of that. That kind of release helps you to just become better. So I want you to write 3 things about how you feel about your work right now. Whether you're a journalist who covers SSOGIE issues, or you're a human rights defender, whether you're a freelancer, or whether you work in an organization. What are the 3 feelings or emotions that you feel towards your work right now? Don't overthink it, just write 3 things that come to your head. So after you've written your 3 words, I want you to just look at them. Are they joyful words? Are they positive? Are you happy with your job? Are you sad? Are you overwhelmed? Are you stressed? Do you feel pressured? Do you want to quit? Or are you just glad you have the job? What are the feelings that you wrote? The 3 feelings you wrote about your current states with your job right now? And I want you to just go over them again. And this time make a sentence using those 3 words. So describe the part of your job or your work that makes you feel that particular emotion. For example, if you said, I feel pressured, just describe which part of your job is making you feel pressured. It could be your boss, it could be, I feel pressured because my boss does not respect my space. Or I feel pressured because my boss sets very tight deadlines for me. Or I felt sad because I just lost my job. Or I felt like quitting my job because it's affecting my mental health. So just go into something specific that makes you feel that way about your work. I don't know if you wrote something positive or something sad, because I ideally do not know where you are with your work. But now I want us to just take a turn, and I want you to write 3 words, 3 positive words about the amazing bits of your work. And similar to the previous exercise, we're going to write out the 3 aspects of our work that make us feel that way. For example, if you wrote excited, it can be, I'm excited to go to work every day to meet my colleagues. Or I'm excited because at the end of the month I get really good money, because money is very important. Or I'm satisfied with my work because it's a mentally safe place for me to be. Or I'm proud of my work because it allows me to tell important stories about queer people that lead to change. So just an aspect of your work that makes you feel the positive feelings. And you can compare both lists, but I want you to dwell more on the positive ones that you have just written and go over them. And if you have time, you can make that list longer. I as a person, I as an activist, I as an artist, I have chosen to focus, to document, to promote queer joy, especially African queer joy, because stories of being queer in Africa are very sad, and sometimes it feels like being LGBT in Africa is the most awful thing you can ever do. Well, that is true, because a lot of us go through things. We still have to deal with homophobic and transphobic societies. We also experience joy, and queer people are very resilient. And sometimes resilience leads to thriving and just living joyful life. And for me personally, I've chosen to document and write about stories of joy. And I would like us to just center joy in our work. Think about the joyful bits, choose the joyful bits. And if you can, as a journalist, tell the joyful stories. It will also help you in the same way that the traumatizing story traumatizes you. The joyful story will also lift your spirits, and it will lift the spirits of every other queer person on the continent who's reading that story. So focus on queer joy if you can. Choose it. Thank you.